Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this episode of Sozo News. Now, I'm not doing, as you saw, I'm not doing a creative entrance today because this is a very serious video that I'm doing. This video, I will be talking about what Jesus truly went through from the Garden of Gethsemane to his death on the cross. And this is going to be a very detailed video. I will be explaining it very detailed. So if you're not a fan of hearing gory details, I would probably click off this video. But there's a huge but here. This is a video I believe that everybody absolutely needs to see. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, when Jesus was praying in the garden, he began to sweat blood. He began to cry tears of blood. And crying and sweating tears of blood is called hemotridrosis. Hemotridrosis or hemotridrosis. It's whatever it's pronounced. And what that is it causes blood vessels beneath the skin on your face, wherever it is, wherever you're sweating blood. It causes those blood vessels to rupture underneath your skin, causing the blood to come out with your sweat or your tears. Now the thing is, you have to be under extreme pain, which Jesus was not under pain yet, or extreme stress. So although there's a lot of people today that complain about being in stress, having stress and anxiety, and I know that stress and anxiety is a very serious thing, and I hope those people get help. But you have to think about how stressed you might be, how stressed somebody you know might be. Jesus was so stressed and had so much anxiety that he was sweating blood. The blood vessels within his body underneath the skin ruptured, and he began to sweat and cry blood. He was so stressed and had so much anxiety. And another thing that hemotridrosis does is it causes your skin to be very soft and sensitive. So sensitive that if one of those guards or soldiers grabbed him and twisted, his skin was so soft it would have just torn the skin. Not let alone them throwing him onto the ground when they found him. Every time they threw Jesus onto the ground, he probably got a new giant gash in his body, in his skin. It would tear his skin open every time they threw him onto the ground. And they kept throwing him onto the ground over and over again until the first time he went to Pilate. By the time he got to Pilate the first time, he probably already looked like a mess. Because when they threw him on the ground, not only did he hit his body, his face smacked against the hard rocks, probably tearing his face, making his face bloody and scratched. So he was probably covered in blood by the time he got to Pilate. And then Pilate allowed them to beat him. Now imagine how sensitive his skin was and how much torn up he already was from being thrown on the ground. Now they whip him with a cat of nine tails and other items. Now a cat of nine tails back then, the whip part actually had pieces of broken glass and broken rock and broken bone inside the whip. So when they whipped Jesus, it would wrap around and it would tear. So it was no longer just the skin being torn. It was latching onto his meat and tearing the meat from his body. And in the Bible it says when they were done with him, he was unrecognizable. Now when I hear that, I know that they beat him a lot. So when I hear that, I picture you couldn't see skin on his body. They beat him so much that any skin that was on his body was covered in blood, but the rest of his body was just complete skinned. You could see the meat of his body. You could see underneath the skin everywhere on his body. So that makes this next part so much worse. They made him carry his cross. And you can imagine the wooden cross pressing against his shoulder where there was no skin, burning his skin because there was no skin to protect the meat. The bottom of his feet probably burned because he was walking on gravel, on sand, barefoot. And they beat him so much, I imagine that the skin on his feet was gone too. So his feet burned as the sand went underneath the skin that he had, or just plain on his meat. Underneath his skin, there was no skin. So his feet probably burned as he walked. The only time that the pain probably went away was when his feet was covered in dirt and sand, so that it made kind of like a shoe of sand beneath his feet as he walked. But no matter what happened, it probably burned. And imagine him falling with the cross like he did. Him landing on the ground, all that sand going inside of his skin, underneath his skin, on his meat. And I imagine the meat torn up, so sand was actually going inside of his body. And then they kept beating him as he walked. And imagine this, before they actually went out there, they stuck a crown of thorns on his head. So when he fell and that sand was going inside of his skin, inside of his meat, that crown of thorns probably smacked against the ground, stabbing further into his head. And then he got to the cross. When they nailed him to the cross, they put a nail through here and through here. And then they put one nail through both feet. And when they put the cross, when it fell into that hole, it let a shock. It shocked when it hit the ground, which probably hurt even more. Especially with his skinned back scraping against the wooden cross. Now, when people hang on the cross, they are being suffocated. And the only way to get a breath is to push up with your 2 feet. Push up on the nail that's going through the 2 feet. Push up and to pull in a breath before you come back down and try to breathe. Now, on the cross, people were probably still throwing things at him. And this went on until he let out his famous last words. It is finished. And then he died. Now the guards they were breaking all the prisoners' legs, the one on this side and the one on this side of him. And then when they noticed he was dead, they did not break his legs, but they stabbed through with a spear, right through his heart, to make sure. And water gushed out. Now the reason I did this video was because it is April. Easter is coming up. And I want people to know on Easter what that is all about. On Good Friday, Jesus was crucified. On Easter, Jesus rose again. Now with the knowledge of everything he went through that I just told you, think of this. He could have called down legions of angels to come down and save him, to come down and heal him, bring him to safety, but he did not. The reason I'm telling you this video is because everything he did for you, him sweating blood, him getting his meat torn, him falling and letting sand go into his skin, into his meat, into his skinless body, because they beat him so much that he was unrecognizable. The reason I am telling you this is because he did that for you. He did that for me. He did that because he loves all of us. God gave Jesus to us to go through all of that because he loves us. And because he did that, we now all have a chance to go to heaven. Beforehand, we would have had to sacrifice an animal. Now, Jesus is that sacrifice. Because Jesus did that, we no longer have to go through what we did before. Now, all you have to do is ask. All you have to do is pray to the Lord and ask Him to come into your heart. And your room in God's mansion has officially been reserved. God has a room in His mansion for every one of us. All we have to do is set up our reservations. This Easter, when you are celebrating with family and friends, think about what Jesus did for you. And then you pause. Whenever you get a chance, you pause. You take the time and you thank Him for what He did. You thank Him. Because if any of you have children, think to yourself, would you sacrifice your own children to save other people? Most would not. Most people would not sacrifice their own children just to save a few lives because they love their children so much. But God loved us so much that He gave His only Son so that we could live in eternity with Him. So this Easter, thank the Lord for what He did for you. If you watched this full video, I applaud you. If you watched this full video, thank you so much. If you want to see more lessons like this, please hit the subscribe button below. If this video spoke to you in any way, please comment below. Please like this video. Let me know. I want to know that I am doing what God wants me to do. I want to know that speaking to you guys is what I'm meant to do. Thank the Lord this Easter. Because us being able to celebrate Easter, us being able to get together as a family, us being able to just ask to go to heaven, us being able just to become saved by asking, that was not free. Just like America's freedom is fought for by soldiers, just how soldiers give their blood and fight for our freedom, Jesus died and gave His blood for our freedom spiritually. Thank you for watching this video. God bless you all. My name is Bright Miles Teets. Have a wonderful Easter. Goodbye.